Today, the focus is going to be on how we are really one spirit with nature, and one spirit with all living beings, and one spirit or one self with our loved ones. And this is a very interesting perspective that science now is going into too, which totally coincides with the perspectives of ancient wisdom traditions in the indigenous world, and also from ancient cultures like India, China, and ancient cultures all over, that we talk more of a sense of union and the importance of realizing that sense of union with nature and among ourselves. And today we're going to have Dr. Dan Siegel talking to us about his new book, Intra-connected, which points to this sense of deep connection and oneness among all of us. I mean, a more simple way of thinking about this is we are all in this together. And if we are going to pull through, it would have to be through cooperation and thriving, but also through deep care and respect, and feeling that we are one with nature and one with each other. And we saw today in the readings or video from Matthew Ricard also the sense of an altruistic caring that starts with transformation at a personal level through meditation and reflection. And it also goes to cultural change from each one of the people that form the culture, understanding the importance of giving equal opportunity to everyone to bloom and achieve the fullness of their humanity and their contribution to humanity, and also globally and for theirs, taking care for theirs. So the meditation today, instead of being a traditional meditation, is a practice that I do every morning, and that I learned many, many years ago from one of my teachers. And it's a prayer, an embodied prayer that I pray every morning, in which I feel that nature and I are one, and that spirit is pervading everywhere. And the prayer itself, first I'll tell you the well, I'll show you the prayer and the movements that I have added to the prayer to feel it even more embodied in myself, as I am part of this nature. So maybe we can do it together, and I invite you also to adopt it for your own practice if you like. We are the guardians of the earth. We are, it is entrusted to us to remind ourselves about how can we dedicate our life to bring healing and compassion and also protection to the earth. So the prayer itself goes like this. O Mother Gaia, Gaia being nature, spirit, you know, O Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of spirit, you whose breasts are the mountains. And so at that time I find the breasts, be a man or a woman, you know, whose breasts are mountains, and kind of, it's beautiful to think of the mountains like the breast of the earth, but also to feel that we are part of that embodied consciousness that manifests as each one of us, but also as a system that works and survives or will perish together. So, O Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of a spirit, you whose breasts are the mountains, and whose rivers And I do this like if it was a river flowing down, and whose rivers and lakes, and then the lake, I trace it around my abdomen. You whose rivers and lakes are the garlands. So that's part of the prayer, are the garlands. So the river being like a garland of the earth, and also the garland right now as we trace it are the garlands and belts. So you whose rivers and lakes are the garlands and belts, please forgive me that I step on you. And so I pray this every time before I come out of bed. Please forgive me that I step on you, and then I stand up. But for now, I'm just going to sit so that you can see me. Please forgive me that I step on you and guide my steps so that I can help protect you and all your creatures. So it's a beautiful reminder and a way of feeling this connection, this intra-connection. And then I have added something to the prayer besides the movements, which is, please forgive me that I step on you and guide my steps so that I can help protect you and all of your creatures. And then I walk to the window, and I open the window and I say, together with, and in the beginning it was my son and his friends, my students, and now is all the children in the earth, all the grandmothers, thinking of the ones more vulnerable, the ones that I more easily could see that would care and would carry this same caring. And then I included the parents and the mothers. And last, now I'm also remembering the politicians, maybe because it seems like a more hard group to convince, some of them, but of course also needed. And a lot of the suffering comes from ignorance, comes from blindness. So what Matthew Ricard was also telling us, in what you watch today for the course on meditating on altruism and working all together, is, well, let's pray so that this suffering and the causes of suffering may be revealed and maybe released, dispelled by understanding and caring and then acting upon it. So let's just do once more this prayer. I know that many of you love nature in different ways. Some of you also come from having grown up in nature, and I think that creates a very solid structure of communion with earth, with animals. And some of us that grew up in cities also, little by little, have discovered that. So let's do the prayer together, with or without the movements. The prayer is, "Oh Mother Gaia," or you can replace it, "Oh Mother Earth," or whatever sounds to you. That's the same concept, but that for you is more, it flows more naturally. So initially it was, "Oh Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of a spirit." Oh Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of a spirit, you whose breasts are the mountains, and whose rivers and lakes are the garlands and belts. Please forgive me that I step on you and guide my steps so that I can help protect you and all of your creatures, together with, and here I invite you to add the people that you most naturally first think of, could be filled with this love and this caring from your own circle of loved ones and acquaintances. and then expand it, together with, and then feeling this connection of being the guardians of the earth, being conscious about how we can support each other, how can we diminish the impact on the earth, and also help others maybe to come to this kind of love and caring. So one last time, so that we remember, O Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of the Lord, you whose breasts are the mountains and whose rivers and lakes are the garlands and belts, please forgive me that I step on you and guide my steps so that I can help protect you and all the creatures, all the life in you. Together with, and here, please invite your own communities and visualize them also being moved to being filled with love and with this sense of union with nature and with each other. All the children, all the grandmothers, all the parents, all the teachers, all the doctors, all the, you name it, social workers, politicians, everyone. Okay, so that's the meditation and the invitation if you like to practice for the rest of this week. Thank you so much to each one of you for coming in this journey of discovering together communion, oneness. And now we are going to hear from Dan, who has been reflecting about these things for years and really just like amazing, innovative, and opening the way for all of us to think about this. I mean, I was looking back today, and here I have all his books. We're going to talk very briefly about some of them, very briefly. But going back to the first reading that you had for this course, if you look there, you will see that this research that I did on learning to learn, neurobiology and cognitive science as basis of autonomous learning already in 2007, two of my sources are Dan Siegel's The Developing Mind, which is from 1999, and then The Mindful Brain, which is from 2007. Which is the same year that I was doing this research. And then many of the questions and main points there, like awareness of self and other, when we consider the power of reflective coherence to alter not only the power of our brain function, but our deep sense of self and our perceptions of the world around us, we realize the need to take this dimension into account in our pedagogies. And that's what I was finding out when I was trying to find the key to learning to learn and to long time learning, which is what we are doing here, lifelong learning, right? How to learn in a way that sticks in our hearts. And so, attunement, everything that we will be talking about today was already in the beginning in the mindful brain and the developing mind, but now it's going deeper and deeper and deeper in ways that's just incredible how science, as interpreted and discovered through scientists like Dan, who is a real pioneer and a very strong force in this change of bringing science more in line with indigenous traditions, ancient traditions, and with the cutting edge discoveries in science. I mean, he is the founder of a collection in the Norton Publishing, among them this pocket guide of interpersonal neurobiology that, as you can see, blew my mind and was part of years ago of this course too. And then Mindsight, the new science of personal transformation. I love this I and sight, the I in I guess, and the sight of seeing the other person as one with me. And this is Dan Siegel, and all that he has brought to the medical relation between patient and doctor. Like, I love his acronym PART, which is about presence, attunement, resonance, and trust, and how a doctor could not only diagnose what's happening to the patient, but actually have a little also sense and empathy. We'll talk more when now Dan is with us about what might that patient be feeling if he has just been told, well, these are the results, you have 4 months to live. Is that all? Or, so he's bringing changes in education, in medicine, in the field of meditation. He came up with Aware, which is this another beautiful book, The Science and Practice of Presence, meditation that's very much about feeling what's felt in the center, and then on many other domains around it, and coming back again to the center. He's, I hope, also going to talk a little bit about this. And then more recently, all of us who have been parents and daughters and sons probably have thought sometime how important it would be to have a school for parents, so that when they are going through this when we are going through this super important formation and accompanying these spirits, we will know better how to do it. And so Dan has not only written individually about it with the adolescent brain and so many things, but he has also written a series of books. This is the most recent one with Tina Payne Bryson, and about no drama, discipline, and the power of showing up, which I totally love. And let's see, The Whole Brain Child, another New York Times best-selling book among the several that Dan has. The Yes Brain, I mean, you name it. So if you are interested in parenting or in healing some of the wounds that perhaps were inflicted unintentionally during that process, this is also a wonderful book. And then all this comes together in Intra-connected, and we are also going to be talking about that. So Dan, welcome. And Rob, can you please put us side by side? Yes, here you are. Dan, our hero, this brain, look at that forehead. 10. 10.
Your busy mind.
God.
Hello, Amelia. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just so happy that you are with us. What a feast again.
Wonderful to be here with you. And hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join your gathering. And I'm excited to be here to talk to you about whatever you want to talk about. So
I think I would like to have a dialogue with you, and then we are open to questions.
Okay.
And in the dialogue, we're going to be talking about the new books. Maybe we can start with the R's and the S. I mean, you are so fabulous about creating, like, also in this pocket thing. It's just amazing the acronyms you come up with.
Oh, those,
to help us remember.
Well, there's also, let me, there was a birthday yesterday. Let me see if I can get it. If I could get a copy of these, that'd be great. Yeah, and yesterday I released my first 2 children's books. So
Oh,
I'll get those for you in a moment.
you mean like short stories? Like,
One is for preschool kids, short stories. The other is more like a kid's manual for how their mind works,
oh my God.
that teaches them certain skills. So I did that one with my student who's now out in the social media world, Dina Margolin. So that's a fun book. I'll show it to you in a second.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, you are so productive. And then we didn't even talk about this collection of how many books now? 80, 90?
Oh,
Of
yeah, it's
the
80. We have
Norton.
80 textbooks that other people write. I've written a couple of them.
Yeah,
That's yeah, but I'm the editor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. And we were enjoying 2 of the books from that collection when Steve Porges came to talk to us last week.
Oh, fantastic.
And then we had the pocket guide to polyvagal theory, and we had the safety and communication.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, so Steve has his books, and then there's a UC Berkeley professor. I'm going to have a hippocampal naming moment. David Presti.
Oh yeah, oh
his
yeah, oh yeah.
His book is actually in our series.
Oh, wonderful.
Basic
Yeah, he has
neuroscience.
taught many courses in OLI, in the
Yeah.
Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, David's great. So
yeah, and we were with David together. You remember when Alex was about to enter
that's right.
the School of Music
My
long
son,
ago
yeah.
in UC Berkeley. Yeah.
So
Wonderful.
boy, that's a long time ago. So yeah. So lots of going on. So the birthday party yesterday was not only Alex Siegel. You can listen to his music on Spotify. Alex, it's his birthday yesterday, but then these 2 books were released. This is Now Maps and Now Maps Junior.
Oh,
They're really
gosh.
fun. I got to say, they're really fun.
Oh,
so
my
I'm
gosh.
very excited to see what kids think of this stuff. And
wow.
yeah, and I just came from a meeting just now. I was at a meeting, a governmental meeting about sort of taking interpersonal neurobiology and looking at the state of health in our state and seeing what we can do about it. So that was fun. And then earlier in the morning, I was with a group in Sweden, talking about how to support the United Nations in working with the Sustainability Development Goals. And there's a wonderful group called innerdevelopmentgoals.org, I think it is, innerdevelopmentgoals.org. And you can see what they're up to. So this material, is good for very personal things like your own self-understanding or your romantic relationships or your way you raise children or how you are as a teacher in a classroom or understanding, a school or, looking at how a state might best, look at how to bring more well-being into the world. And then even looking at the United Nations, how you look at global issues. And one of the people at this meeting was John Dower, and he has a great book called I think it's called Speed and Scale about the climate crisis. So we were having a big chat about that at the meeting.
Like economies that are going to be hopefully more based on quality and not on quantity, so that we have a slower growth. But yeah, so I want to talk about all of that with you, but maybe we can begin with something that I saw yesterday in one video as I was also reviewing things. You were talking in 2014 in Stanford, and you were talking to people that were in the field of medicine. So in that talk, you were talking about the model of the brain. That's just such a wonderful thing. I know this must look like a distant past for you, but I thought that one is the understanding of a little bit of the brain and what happens, with the brain stem, the prefrontal cortex, and then the amygdala. We have been also looking at some of that here in another class. And then when we are under threat or in a situation that somehow we have a strong emotion, sometimes we flip it, and then we don't have access to the prefrontal cortex. And then you were talking about that in the relation between doctor and patient. And then that was totally connected with your concept of mindsight, which is this fabulous book that you had. So can you tell us how you got to mindsight and why is it so crucial in medicine to have the doctors not just see the patient like a structure or an organism that they are just diagnosing, but actually like another human being. And from that, we are going to like themselves. And from that, we are going to go to intra-connected and this sense of being one, you know, with among ourselves and with nature and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit more of why it's so crucial for health and for personal transformation and for the relation patient-doctor. We have here several doctors too, and people who are related to that field, this mindsight concept. And then we'll go to intra-connected.
Well, I mean, the kind of summary statement is when I was in medical school, I noticed that my teachers could tell a patient they were ill and dying and just walk away, as if the patient didn't have subjective sensations, meaning the feeling in their body of what a heavy thing that is to be told, the emotions, the thoughts, all of that is under the word mind. So we don't mean intellect by that word, but the world of subjective experience that you're aware of if you have consciousness of it. Anyway, so I dropped out of school, but when I decided to go back after trying out some other professions, I made up this word mindsight for what I thought you needed to be an ethical, caring, compassionate physician. And of course, my teachers hadn't changed. So I would use my teachers as anti-role models.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went into pediatrics and then switched over to psychiatry, you know, this word was just very helpful. And, you know, this was in the late 70s, early 80s. And around the same time in the field of psychology, a process called theory of mind was being proposed around the same time. And then later, about 10 years later, something called reflective function would build on ideas of what's called psychological mindedness. So there were research terms that paralleled this kind of clinical, practical term of mindsight. But it's something that when a family lacks it, children don't develop it.
Mm.
So it's something you need to learn. And, you know, some kids teach it to themselves through stories they watch or shows they watch on TV, whatever. So you can develop it, but it's something that's experience dependent in its development. So in medicine, you know, when physicians lack it, or when it's beaten out of them, which is pretty much the case, they lose empathy. And when they start losing touch with what they're feeling, they're incredibly at risk of burnout. So, you know, Stanford had 2 suicides of residents of the medical staff, and they asked me to come do an in-service for the nursing and medical professors, the teachers. And we spent a whole day. And just to give you a quick little story, this is public, so I can say it. The dean of the medical school walks in and he goes, you know, the head of our continuing education is a surgeon, and what an idiot he is to bring a psychiatrist to tell us something in medicine, you know. And then he takes a deep breath and I'm going, oh my God, this is going to be like being back, you know, in medical school. He goes, but let me tell you how wrong I am. And he pulls out this piece of paper and he says, on my desk this morning, this is the dean, you know, is the report of all the medical schools, you know, the association of all the medical training. He goes, you know, in 7 years ago, we found that 44% of our residents were seriously depressed, anxious, or suicidal. 44%. And we found out about it. And now 7 years later, maybe it was 4 years later, what it was, a few years later, that day, the report came out, it was now 56%.
Mm.
And they had lost 2 physicians, you know, which was incredible because a few months later, I was asked to go to Palo Alto High School across the street where 2 kids had killed themselves. And that was after 2 other high school kids had killed themselves. So you can watch that talk on my website. The students made a film of that, me talking to the parents about suicide and about, you know, values and stuff. anyway, so that's where the word mindsight comes in, and that's where, whether it was at Palo Alto High School or Stanford Medical School, it was the same issue, is that when you have a mindsightless culture, pretty much like the United States culture, you have this incredible vulnerability, not only to burnout, but people get on social media, and instead of being aware of the internal nature of the mind, they're just busy, soaking in a feeling of depletion and comparison, and feeling you're inadequate and you're incompetent and all these terrible things. And now with the pandemic, we're so disconnected from each other that we've never seen, and this is part of this meeting I was just at for the state government, we've never seen such high rates of depression, anxiety, addiction, domestic violence, and suicide as we've had now. So,
right. And so we need to come back to this connection, which is the same that Steve was telling us last week. He was saying that the cultivating of the mammalian connection, this, nurturing
absolutely.
towards each other, is good not only for our emotional health, but also for our physical health, because it's a call that's already deep within us. And I think that's where your work and the Intra-connected book is just so absolutely beautiful. I was in awe reading the copy that was
Amelia,
sent to me.
thank
Yeah,
you.
you go right to the core. I mean, the sense of self, the sense of identity, and the sense of belonging. Can you share with us how your own sense of self got a little bit shaken, that then you started also to question this identity, self, belonging, and all the things that naturally take us to feel ourselves like separate self, or like I belong to this group or not to this group?
Yeah, well, thank you, Amelia. First of all, you're one of the first people to ever read the book, so I appreciate the positive comments. It was a journey for about 3.5 years myself to write this thing and find the right way the book could be expressed. But in terms of your question that I talk about in the book, of my own experience of self, the first thing to say is that it's a long story, but the short version with what Amelia you're asking about is that we have these lessons, just to give you a context of why this story is relevant to what we're talking about, what Amelia is asking me to share with you. We have this finding in contemplative practices where people will say there's no self, which I found really fascinating, because who's saying that?
Right. So it's a self empty of something, but not non-existent.
Well, right. But you'll hear people interpret it as non-existent.
Right.
And then you get into discussions, which we'll get into in a moment. So that was interesting. And then in indigenous teachings, also for thousands of years, you see this notion that who we are is the fullness of nature, and that the body is just one part of it. So you can say, well, what's happening with those important messages, and are they relevant today? And since we're in the United States, we can say that scientific studies of this country, the United States, the culture of this country is the most individualistic culture on the planet, meaning that the way the self is construed, which is the scientific term for basically constructed, the way the mind constructs a sense of self is as separate as individuals. Right. So what happened to me, which I think in a way, when I wrote this book, it was much longer, and then I had to make it much shorter, which was good, because I really had to think of what's the core issue. So for me, before I turned 20, Amelia's, this is the story you want me to talk about, right?
Right, the one with the horse.
Yeah, I was working for the World Health Organization in Mexico, and I was working to try to get an assessment of folk healers, curanderos, and I was given the assignment to go interview the Queen of the Mushrooms. So, UC Berkeley, Michael Pollan, just did this. You probably have seen the Netflix documentary. Well, I was blown away and I texted Michael about this, but I was watching it, because when I was almost 20, I was on a horse going to see her, that very woman they feature in the documentary. But on my way to see her, at a full gallop, the saddle on the horse got loose. it turned to the horse's belly, and then my feet stayed in the stirrups, and I was dragged, my colleagues tell me, for about 100 yards. So they thought I was dead, but obviously I wasn't dead. They thought I broke my neck, but I didn't break my neck. I destroyed my face. I broke my nose, lost all these teeth. But the biggest thing that I lost, besides breaking the bones, was I lost my identity. So I had no idea who I was, and I was like wide awake. And even though I had all these dangling teeth and all this kind of stuff and broken bones, I was laughing a lot. I kept on saying to them, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And everything like was sort of sparkly and magical. Nothing had a name, so vegetables would be these wild exploding colors, and everything was like just amazing. And I say this in the book, and I guess I'll have to be saying it a lot publicly, but I have an addicted relative, a drug addict relative. So I had this incredible psychological aversion to ever using any substances that altered your state of mind, because substances had ruined this person's life, and basically did. So I never used anything. So when I came out of that, I just had this different feeling about when people would call me Dan. I would kind of laugh because I knew that was really just partly true. Like there was something much bigger than saying the self was inside the body. So I forgot about it for a long time. And then one time I was asked to teach at a mindfulness conference, but I didn't know anything about mindfulness as far as I knew. And the person running the conference is a guy up where you are, Jack Kornfield. And Jack asked me, and he's one of the main people who brought Buddhist meditation to the West. And he says to me, well, how'd you learn about this mindfulness stuff? And I said, well, I don't know anything about mindfulness. He goes, no, you know something about it. How'd you learn? And then for the first time in decades, I brought up the horse accident. And he was like, he called me a few hours later, and he called me and he said, do you know what you told me? I said, what? He goes, you got by accident what people try to get by meditating for decades. I said, why would someone to break their face meditating? What are you talking about? He goes, you have no idea what I'm talking about. I go, worse than no idea. You're not making any sense. Why would someone want to hurt themselves meditating? He goes, losing your identity. I said, well, even that, why would someone want to do that? So it began this deep, collaboration, teaching together, but also a friendship. And since that time, that was like 2005, it's been an amazing journey because, the psychedelic research has gotten really robust, and some of the mechanisms I talk about in this book, aware, there's a great interest from the psychedelic researchers in what's described there as the source of consciousness and what psychedelics might do. But what that accident, I think, did is it shut off a part of my brain that constructs this narrative self, which is the idea of how we receive messages from culture. And in this narrative, it's this sense of subjective experience, perspective, and agency. It's an acronym you can use for self that spells the word spa, but the spa of self can be narrowly put through like a lens, if you will, where you just say, I'm just this body, or I'm have the perspective through only these glasses, or I'm only acting on behalf of this body. And that individualized view is a me, but I do some systems work, system science work with some people at MIT, and we went to work with a scientist who had become a shaman up in Colorado, and he put us all into the forest in Crestone, Colorado, by ourselves. And then at the end of that experience, we were brought back from our separate spaces, and then we went in the circle, and all my colleagues kept on saying what it was like, which is very similar to my experience, but I wouldn't have used the same words. They said, oh, I was interconnected, I was interdependent, I had interbeing, I was interlaced, I was interwoven. And then it came time for this body to talk, and I just couldn't say the inter word. I said, because when I was in the forest, there was no separate I to be in the forest. I was the forest, I was the trees, I was the sky, I was the clouds, I was the creek, I was the floor, I was the tent, I was the body. I don't know what to call that, because interconnected really doesn't apply. It was more like, and I faltered, and then I just said, it was more intra-connected. And so everyone went, okay, intra-connected, fine, whatever. And then we went back to the place we were staying, and I got out my computer and I started taking some notes. And I said, whoa, I had this amazing intra-connected experience. and the word processor automatic changer kept on correcting it.
Totally.
Interconnected. And it turns out intra-connected is not a word.
Right.
And then I realized, well, wow, if we don't have a word that is the perspective of the whole in English, and I can't actually find it in other languages either. I've gone around asking people for it. But at least in our language, English, if you don't have a word for something, then often it's because you're not conceiving of it and you're not having a way of really getting a sense of it. So that's when I realized this book needed to be called Intra-connected. And then, as Amelia is saying, the whole journey is like a lifespan journey where you see how do the messages you get from your parents, from your peers, from your teachers, from where you work, from society, how do those messages start building this default mode network, the midline area of the brain, to create a sense of self that's separate? Because in other cultures, you can have, a collectivistic sense. So basically what this book does is it allows you to go on that journey all the way in some pretty wild spaces it takes you in. And Amelia, I'm so glad it was resonating with you because
I loved it. I mean, I just thought, wow, this is the first time that I'm seeing, the scriptures from India and the most cutting edge science coming together in this way of thinking about the self. And, even what the Yoga Sutra says, the union between the little self and the bigger self and everything around, and, Qigong also, the chi of the person and the chi of what around being one, and
exactly.
but you are doing it from science, and how daring, how daring.
Well,
And
this is it, and I try to make that exactly like you're saying, and I'm glad it came off that way, to say, look, this is a message that for thousands of years in indigenous teachings have been taught, thousands of years independently, contemplative teachings across different contemplative practices have taught it. So science is just like joining an ancient conversation. I try to make that really clear. This is not something new, but what is new is to look at the science aspect of what's called integration.
Right.
And to say you don't need to get rid of the me and just become this collective we. So that's why the subtitle of this book, if you can see it here, is we, me plus we, is the way you integrate identity as an interior me and a relational we as the integration of self, identity, and belonging. And so once it was clear that, this isn't just saying go to collectivism and give up the individuality, and it addresses directly with quotes from all sorts of people, when people say no self, what Thich Nhat Hanh, for example, means by no self is no totally separate self.
Right. I love the example that he sometimes does. He shows a glass and he says, this glass is empty. And then it says, but the glass exists. It's empty of what? It's empty of tea, but it's full of air. And I think in a way it's similar to us. I mean, we can be empty of the self, of a separate self, but we can be full by this sense of openness and interconnection.
Yeah.
And also knowing that that's all the time changing, and what you also call emergence, and that is not linear. It's chaotic, and it keeps remaking itself. I love the chapter on the self, not as a noun, but as a verb.
Oh, yeah.
The same with the mind. People are saying the mind is really minding a process within the body that changes all the time, and that is influenced by sensations and reflections and interrelations. I mean, I think it's such a brilliant book. And then I love that you went through from conception and birth to infancy, to toddlerhood, to school years, to adolescence, to leaving home, all the influences that make us feel perhaps separate, but how we could also go through that in a way that we are fostering with our children and in ourselves a sense of completion and interconnection. And then you have a fascinating chapter on travels. And I have experienced that too. And I was talking to a friend recently, how when we travel, because we are in a different environment, so we drop some of our sense of how everyone has related to us and what we thought that we were. And often we are not fluent in the language of the countries, which make us be silent a bit more, which is a great thing because we can see more and perceive more. And we are more open to guessing and sensing and feeling directly what's going on. So can you tell us a little bit more about travels and selfing, diversity and possibility, challenges and opportunities,
Yeah, well, that's a lot. In 4 minutes, that's a lot, Amelia. I'll do my
Well, okay, do what you can, and if you
yeah,
can
let
stay
me
with
try my
us.
best. And the invitation is to do what Amelia is saying, is to really look at your own journey through this and the travels even of the book. And I try to give pausing moments doing it, is to say that, all these pivotal times when things shape us into separation are also windows of opportunity to open us. And then I introduce in the travels section, you see the application of it, but earlier I introduced the idea of an identity lens. And then you learn in the book to actually adjust this lens like a camera, where you have an interior me, and then you begin to feel into people and your relationships with them, that relational we, and then even go into nature and feel the relational we of nature. So the travels does just what you're saying, Amelia. I think it's beautiful that you come to realize when you travel that our sense of self is context dependent. That means the setting that you're in, the messages you get, reinforce a certain direction that you've constructed a self. So the exciting thing about that is, number one, and I should make sure to say this, the construction of a separate self, let's call it the solo self, may be the reason why we didn't handle the viral pandemic so well. It's definitely underneath racism and social injustice. It's misinformation and polarization. It's addictions to screens. It's the source of the loneliness. And it's, believe it or not, the source, I believe, of the climate crisis. So all of these huge things that are making life on Earth really, really painful, I think come down to the modern mind's construction of a solo self view. And it's not only a mistaken identity, but it is actually, I think, a lethal lie. Right. So the plea of the book is, and I invite you all to join the conversation, come to our website. We're going to have something when the book is released on the 15th and all sorts of events. But, the idea is to have a conversation, one person at a time, the people you work with in your mentoring, the ways you may work with children, the ways you just have a conversation at dinner. And I remember saying this to Ram Dass before he passed. We were having dinner in Hawaii where he lived. And I said, why would anyone have to use the word self as a synonym for the body? Right. And he had a stroke, but he got so excited about this idea. And I said, it's really simple. Why don't we just take that word self and expand it to be, yes, the body, the me, but also the we. And then you just can remember this with the word mui. So mui is so happy to be here with all of you. If you want to have a book club about the book and join in on the conversation, that'd be great to, this is something that isn't just a book. This is something where you go deep into it and then you bring it out into the world, however it works for you to do that.
It's a movement. Yeah. It's a movement, really. I mean, it's what we are needing in this time.
Maybe. And whenever we see an M or a W, we put them together so we can say it's a movement. And we can have a weekend time together. So anyway, thank you for letting me be here. It's a joy. And Amelia, thank you for really taking such care of these wonderful ideas and you're offering this learning immersion for everyone.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's really wonderful. Thank you. Keep bringing us all these amazing things. And those 2 little books on children, I want to read them. I want to give it to people.
Oh, good. Please do. And let me know what you think of them or the kids that you read them to.
Okay. Are they already available?
They're available. They came out yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thank you
so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so here we are. Thank you so much, Rob, for keeping us a little bit more here. Could we have just some impressions about this? Let's see. Can we go into gallery, maybe? Gallery. Okay, great. So what do you think? mind-blowing, huh? Each one in their own way, just so mind-blowing. Any comments, any ideas? Where can we get it and when? I'm excited to read the book. The book, I'll send you a link. It's not yet, I mean, they just sent me a digital copy, but it's going to come out in November. So I'll tell you, and also probably going to Dan Siegel's website. So let's see, Judy.
Thank you. I just have a question I need to clarify. I think I understand it, but when he talked about the accident that he had on the horse, and how when he fell, he had that kind of enlightenment and saw him. Had he had a mushroom yet, or he hadn't? That was
No,
totally
he hadn't. He hadn't.
That's what I thought he made clear that he didn't.
He
Sounds
was
like
on
the experience.
Yeah,
was
yeah.
almost like the kind of experience that people describe when you have a mushroom. So that was kind of the point she was making of just that.
Right. And then the wonderful thing about the book is that he goes stage by stage. Since he's a specialist on attachment and childhood and adolescence and all that, he goes stage by stage and shows how we are influencing our children with our behaviors and our ways of relating to them, or have been influenced, also what we receive from our parents, etc. And then how we can keep transforming that, so healing. And so no mushrooms in all this. There are no mushrooms involved. In the time of the accident, thank you for the question, Judy. In the time of the accident, the concoction was so strong that for 2 days he couldn't remember the name Dan, or whether he was a boy or a girl, or affluent or not affluent or anything. And so it was an interesting way of being alive, but not having any of these conditionings. And I have traveled a lot. I lived in 5 continents for 20 years. I was not in Argentina or any of my, and it did something similar. You just drop layers and layers and layers of who other people had told you that you were, and you thought that you were because of that kind of context. So it's very interesting because it then opens you up to this intra-connection, and in a way you are practicing a little bit of this also with your volunteer people, and I'm sure you do it also in other ways, but within our course the idea was to give some kind of a stimulus for this through a little bit through meditation about your own personal transformation, and a little bit about social transformation and intra-connection with the volunteering, and then all that like positive neuroplasticity, because yes, it takes you to new spaces of co-learning and questioning and experiencing different things. So thank you for wanting to participate in this journey. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to thank you. It's taking you out of different frameworks and also building on many things that you probably are already doing. So I know that many of you have done volunteering before. Okay, so any other comments, questions? Next week, we are going to have Rick Hanson. And so we are going to talk a little bit more about just one thing. And I'm happy that you are enjoying the book. Rick Hanson is coming out with another book, Just One Thing, where 52 practices, like the 52 weeks of the year, for personal transformation, one simple practice at a time to have a Buddha brain. And then in the one that he's bringing out now is about interrelations. So as you can see, they are all kind of overlapping and telling us about how we are on our own personal journeys, and also how we can be in our interrelating journeys. So yeah, a lot of different stimulus. Just take whatever resonates with you and forget about the rest.
I just want to say I'm just stunned at the level of people that you're bringing in to talk to us. I mean, it's just, it just blows my mind. I mean, I watched the interview this week, and my brain has been kind of on fire ever since then. But it is so incredible to have people like Dan just talk to us. His personal story this week was so compelling. It just brought it into context for me, made it seem so real that I don't know of any other way I could absorb the information like this, and I'm deeply grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you remember when Castellanos was here, Dr. Castellanos, and she shared her story about breastfeeding, and then the part of the brain that was trying to understand, is this me, the mother, or the child? Is it also part of me, and it is me and it's not me? And, in a way, it's the same concept of intra-connected. And then it also relates to what Steve Porges was telling us, that as the mammals evolved from the reptilians used to have their sense of connection with the world, whatever, in the back part, and it was a more cold, distant thing. But in mammalian, it moved to the front, and it was through nursing that then it developed this whole other wiring about caring. So they are all, really telling us the same. A lot of hope in the human species, and a lot of hope on our own journeys of separating from any painful experiences we may have happened before, although recognizing them and honoring them, but at the same time finding new ways to heal ourselves and know that is within ourselves. So thank you for being here in this wild ride. And for your volunteering. Thank you too.
Amelia, Judy asked if we could end the class with the practice that you started with. I don't know if we have time, but
yes. Okay, let's end with this communion with nature. So, oh Mother Gaia, you who are sitting at the lap of spirit, please, you whose breasts are the mountains, and whose rivers and lakes are the mountains, whose rivers and lakes are the garlands and belts, please forgive me that I step on you, and guide my steps so that I can help protect you and all life in you, together with, and now please include your communities in this prayer.